What if you discovered there were messages that could change the course of your life, but only a few have heard them? Imagine a dim light at the end of a dark road, the distant sound of footsteps and a soft voice whispering something that simultaneously frightens and soothes. Today we'll learn how to recognize when a warning from Mary is true and why it matters. Have you ever experienced this?
Stay with me until the end.
Because what you're about to discover may surprise you and perhaps change the way you perceive signs, prophecies, and the spiritual experience itself. Medjugorje has appeared on the spiritual map as a place where heaven seems to touch earth, and where Mother Mary's messages reverberate powerfully among the faithful and seekers. But among so many voices, how can we separate divine counsel from emotion, desire, or deception? Discernment is the key word here. Learning to identify authentic warnings requires more than feeling. It requires practice, testing, and attentive listening to the fruit these words produce in life. The 7 unrevealed messages we will mention throughout this video are not just mysterious stories, they are invitations to pay attention and notice patterns that repeat themselves when the supernatural touches everyday life. You may have felt a warmth in your chest, an inexplicable peace, or a tightness in your stomach after hearing a seemingly common phrase. Is this a warning, or is it just our hearts trying to find meaning? In this video, I'll guide you through internal and external signs, confirmations that appear in small coincidences, and fruits that show whether the message was meant to edify or confuse. I'm not talking about passing curiosity. I'm talking about a calling that transforms attitudes, generates compassion, and brings about real change in family, community, and personal faith. Along the way, we'll discuss how prophecies manifest in subtle yet direct ways, how Mother Mary often calls for conversion with words that seem simple but carry urgency, and why so many people around the world sense something is coming. You'll learn how to ask practical questions to test a spiritual experience, how to seek confirmation without falling into fanaticism, and why patience and observation are powerful allies in discernment. Perhaps you've heard of the 7 unrevealed messages and are left with a twinge of curiosity. You want to know what each promised, what each requested, and what signs accompanied these warnings. Or perhaps you've never considered it and now feel a lump in your throat just imagining that something like this could touch your life. In either case, I want you to feel safe exploring, asking questions and sharing. If something resonated with you while listening to the first words, write your reaction in the comments. I read and select stories to provide real-life examples in the following sections. This video isn't about sensationalism or fear-mongering. It's about clarity, love, and spiritual preparation. It's about recognizing when a message is a compass pointing toward change and when it's merely a reflection of our insecurities. Stay with me until the end and allow yourself to learn how to differentiate an authentic warning from an emotional illusion. What you discover now may surprise you and open doors to a deeper understanding of what it means to hear a message from Mother Mary. Now, without haste, let us approach this whispering light and see, step by step, how to listen wisely. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what resonated with you most. Or if you've had a similar experience, share it quickly. Sometimes your story is exactly the sign someone else needed to hear. When you comment, you're not just talking to me, you're helping create a space where others find the courage to share and discern together. If you feel this content brought clarity or peace, click like. This simple gesture helps the video reach those who are lost, curious, or searching for a sign right now. And if you want to continue this journey with me, subscribe to the channel. Here we will unpack each of the 7 unrevealed messages in depth, bringing real testimonies and practical tools for discernment. Your subscription is the vote of confidence that allows me to dedicate time to researching, verifying, and bringing stories that matter. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content. And I read every comment. Many of the examples I'll share in the next installments come precisely from the experiences you share. So if something in there touched you, right below, like and subscribe. That way you'll ensure you'll see the sequel and also contribute to helping more hearts find light. Now let's move on and calmly examine the first sign that usually accompanies a true warning and understand together what it's trying to tell us. For many, Medjugorje is a meeting point between heaven and earth. For others, a mystery that insists on returning to public conversation whenever someone seeks signs, solace, or guidance. Explaining Medjugorje in simple terms doesn't erase the spiritual dimension that surrounds it, but it helps situate those who have never been there or never heard of the apparitions. It is a small town in Bosnia-Herzegovina where, since 1981, a group of young people began reporting encounters with the figure they call Mother Mary. Over the decades, these accounts have taken shape, gained a repertoire, and developed a melting pot effect. Shared prayers, recorded testimonies, pilgrimages, and a constant flow of people seeking inner transformation or answers to difficult decisions. When we look at this phenomenon with curious eyes, we realize that it is not just an isolated event. It is a collective journey that touches the lives of those who participate, directly or indirectly. The visionaries, young people who claim to receive messages, have become central voices in this narrative. It's important to state frankly that paying attention to who speaks and how they speak is part of discernment. There are scholars, theologians, and researchers who follow these experiences methodically. There are priests and spiritual leaders who welcome stories and guide communities. And there are believers and witnesses who, driven by faith, share real fruits of their lives. This group of agents gives the phenomenon a social and intellectual dimension that deserves respect, not because we have an absolute verdict, but because the presence of investigation and care transforms curiosity into responsibility. By observing behind the scenes, meetings, studies, communications between leaders and pilgrims, we better understand how faith is organized around a message and how the community filters, validates, and lives this experience. The messages that emerge from this context speak to many because they touch on universal themes: peace, conversion, prayer, a change of mindset, and preparation for decisive times. When someone reports hearing a word that moves them deeply, it's not uncommon for that person to also report a change in decisions, reorganizing priorities, investing more in relationships, adopting daily prayer practices, or simply looking at life with a new meaning. These small decisions, accumulated, generate a profound impact on the family and community. And when we speak of transformation, we're not just talking about fleeting emotions, but about tangible fruits, attitudes that persist, habits that solidify, behaviors that reveal a new path. It's this impact that many scholars attempt to measure, and it's this transformation that makes the phenomenon relevant beyond sensationalism. At the same time, it's important to remember that the human dimension brings challenges. Intense emotions can be mistaken for signs. Coincidences can be interpreted as confirmation. And the search for revelations can, in some cases, open the door to fanaticism. Therefore, the community and leaders play a vital role in providing guidance. A discerning mindset doesn't suppress experience. It organizes it. It investigates, compares accounts, observes results, and seeks verification. When analysis is done seriously by researchers, theologians, or pastors, what was once a loose story adapts to a more responsible reading, where the hidden truth isn't pursued for mere sensationalism, but examined with care and humility. The propagation of messages through letters, videos, testimonials, and meetings creates an ecosystem where the community itself acts as a filter. Testimonies that are repeated in different contexts gain strength. Signs that appear in isolation call for caution. This process of community validation is essential Because faith isn't built in absolute silence. It's built through dialogue, exchange, and the practical impact of words. Therefore, looking behind the scenes at who welcomes, how they welcome, and what fruits emerge later, helps us separate what merely sparks curiosity from what truly generates lasting change. Historically, the apparitions in Medjugorje have attracted academic and pastoral attention. There are studies that approach the phenomenon from sociological, psychological, and theological perspectives. Some compile accounts of conversions and lives changed after supposed warnings, and others criticize, question, or call for further investigation. This debate is healthy. It reveals that we are not dealing with something trivial, but a phenomenon that questions faith, reason, and community. And it is precisely this questioning that leads so many people today to seek to understand whether there is a hidden truth to be revealed or merely a reflection of a human need for meaning. In practice, the reception of these messages translates into daily rituals, pilgrimages that bring strangers together in prayer, groups that read the words and implement practical changes in family life, retreats that encourage courageous decisions, and support circles that help maintain a mindset of conversion. These actions demonstrate that words, when genuinely received, tend to bear fruit, compassion, care, and commitment to the common good. And it is precisely this kind of fruit that differentiates a legitimate signal from something fleeting, the ability to generate actions that transform and sustain a community. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic and explore how, in the daily lives of those who live this experience, small signs become confirmations, and how a single word can open doors to decisions that shape destinies. Comment below, this makes sense to me. Not every message that reaches our hearts carries the same weight. Some are merely a breath of comfort, others are silent invitations to a life change. And there are those that sound like a true wake-up call, a warning that demands a response. Understanding these differences is essential, so we don't get confused amidst the noise of everyday life. A warning carries urgency, as if someone knocking loudly on the door and saying, "Pay attention, something needs to be done now." It's that feeling that if you ignore it, something important could be lost. A call, however, is different. It is patient, formative, almost like a friendly voice, inviting you to gradually adjust your course. And comfort is the spiritual embrace, the word that doesn't demand immediate action, but restores hope and gives you the strength to carry on. A good way to understand this difference is to think about the alarms we have at home or on our cell phones. Some alarms are simply reminders. They play soft music to remind you to drink water or stretch. There are urgent alarms, those that go off loudly and make you get up from where you are, because they indicate that something serious needs your attention right now. It's the same in our spiritual life. Not everything we hear demands rushing or desperation, but some messages truly urge us to change direction without delay. I remember a story about someone who said that, after a period of separation, she began to feel an inner uneasiness every time she passed a church. At first, it seemed minor, but the uneasiness grew until she decided to go in and pray for a few minutes. That day, she met someone who was offering help to those experiencing emotional difficulties. And this encounter was the turning point for her to seek support, reorganize her life, and rebuild broken relationships. This is an example of a calling, something that begins as a whisper, grows in silence, and when you respond, opens a door to profound transformation. Warnings, on the other hand, have the power to change course in an instant. Some report that, after feeling a strong intuition not to follow a certain path, they changed course, only to discover that something serious had happened right where they were about to pass. These are experiences that have an impact, that change the mindset and make the person question whether it was just coincidence or if there was something bigger behind it. These stories are common in the context of apparitions and spiritual messages because they convey the idea of an active communication between the divine and the human, a kind of dialogue where we are called not only to listen but to act. Comfort is different. It's like hearing a word that doesn't ask anything of you, but brings relief, gives you breath, and reminds you that you're not alone. It doesn't provoke urgency, but it does give you the courage to continue the journey. Knowing how to differentiate these three levels, warning, calling, and comfort, is crucial to avoid confusion. Because not every intense emotion means urgency. Just as not every tranquility means you should stay where you are. These distinctions also help us develop a more mature perspective on our own spiritual life. If everything seems like a warning, our hearts live in a state of alarm and become weary. If everything seems merely a consolation, we risk falling into inertia. Balancing these signals is like learning to drive. We need to know when to accelerate, when to brake, and when to simply maintain our composure. This gives us the autonomy and awareness to make decisions without losing our sense of reverence for the mystery. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding these differences is only the first step. The most transformative part is realizing how these warnings manifest within us, what internal signals accompany these messages, and how we can learn to distinguish true inspiration from a momentary impulse. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. Note that beyond the internal signs that touch the heart, there is a universe of external signs that often validate a message, and that, when seen clearly, help separate coincidence from genuine confirmation. Coincidences happen all the time, but a coincidence that stands out because it repeats itself in different moments, contexts, and sources can be a valuable clue. It's not just the isolated fact, but the pattern that emerges, a word that reappears in readings, a theme that resurfaces in conversations with different people, a providential event that seems to connect loose ends in your journey. These patterns have an impact because they shift our mindset and push us to make decisions that little by little transform habits and relationships. Think of what I call providential signs, doors that, after persistent prayer and consistent action, open unexpectedly. A job that appears after weeks of asking and preparing. A reconciliation that begins with newfound courage to make a call. A service opportunity that appears when your heart had already changed direction. These external fruits do not arrive magically without context. They often come as a result of concrete actions, an inner disposition that translates into practical choices. Confirmation from others is also crucial. When spiritual leaders, trusted individuals, and even strangers who share values point in the same direction, it adds credibility. I'm not talking about automatic approval, but about independent echoes that converge. Someone on a retreat, another person reading the same text, pastoral advice that coincides with what you've been feeling. These echoes don't prove everything, but they reduce the likelihood that you're simply projecting a personal need onto reality. It's important, however, to understand the difference between sincere testimonies and emotional collusion. A group that constantly seeks confirmation can become an echo chamber, where the desire for revelation creates a false sense of truth. Therefore, external validation works best when it is plural and independent, when the same clues appear in diverse contexts and not just within a closed circle. The fruits of daily life are perhaps the most direct test. An authentic message tends to generate lasting behaviors, more patience, acts of service, reconciliation, ethical decisions that resist pressure, concrete investments in relationships rather than just sensation-seeking. When prayer generates practical openness, for example, when someone prays for direction in a project and then begins to receive invitations that require commitment and real work, then we have more than momentary comfort. We have a transformation that brings real impact. A simple illustration: imagine someone who, after months of persistent prayer for a job, begins to be recognized for their efforts and receives an offer that not only improves their financial situation, but also allows them to contribute to community service. The door that opens in this case is both a sign and a fruit, a response that legitimizes the journey and reinforces the credibility of the experience. However, a sincere warning against self-deception and biased confirmations is necessary. The human mind seeks meaning and sometimes forces connections where none exist. Memory adjusts to validate what we wish to believe, and emotional pressure can transform an ordinary signal into something extraordinary. Simple tools of discernment help avoid these pitfalls. Record what happened without additions, seek confirmation from diverse sources, and give it time to see if the results are sustainable. Avoid immediate radical decisions based solely on a single event. At the same time, do not dismiss a profound experience simply because it requires patience to produce visible results. Hidden truth rarely reveals itself as an instant spectacle. It often appears as a sequence of small, coherent events that, when aligned, point in a direction. Another relevant aspect is the behind-the-scenes nature of this validation. Those who accompany, guide, and investigate. Institutions, leaders, and researchers who study reports, interview witnesses, and observe the practical effects in communities act as necessary filters. When there is a minimum of serious scrutiny, meetings, verifications, pastoral care, the phenomenon gains a layer of accountability that reduces the risk of hasty interpretations. This doesn't eliminate the mysterious dimension of what occurs, but it brings balance, faith, and reason, working together to separate revelations that edify from impulses that drag. The journey of discernment is, therefore, a blend of spiritual sensitivity with objective criteria, a process where humility and patience carry as much weight as the initial emotion. It's also worth mentioning how the social and cultural context influences the reception of these signals. In environments where spiritual authority is strong and well-guided, confirmations tend to be treated with more methodological rigidity. In less structured spaces, the risk of manipulation by charisma or personal interests increases. Therefore, considering the environment, the interests involved, and the message's coherence with solid ethical values is part of the assessment. Look for signs of integrity, consistency in the lives of those proclaiming, a willingness to listen to criticism, and openness to correction. These behind-the-scenes details speak volumes about the intention behind the message and the likelihood that it is a genuine call for transformation. Finally, keep in mind that confirming a message isn't the end. It's the beginning of a journey of decisions that shape a destiny. External confirmation helps pave the way, but the journey will continue to require daily choices, mindset adjustments, and actions that prove the authenticity of the call. When coincidences, confirmations, and fruits converge, a practical clarity emerges that allows for more mature decisions and a real impact on personal and community life. With this understanding, we are invited to live more wisely, testing, observing, and acting responsibly. Comment: "That makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject." And to do so, let's calmly examine the core of the calls that many attribute to the apparitions, the 7 unrevealed messages that, in essence, convey different tones of warning and guidance, and which deserve to be understood carefully, without panic, but with attention to the impact they have on one's personal journey. The first message usually comes with a tone of urgency. It's a call that alerts us to immediate decisions and calls for rapid change. What we need to watch for here is clarity without fanfare. If the word demands responsible action and opens practical paths, it has a better chance of being genuine than something that merely inflames fear. The second message appears as an invitation to conversion, slow and insistent, working on the mindset over time. To recognize this voice, observe whether there is a gradual movement away from harmful habits and a real growth in the pursuit of integrity and honesty. The third comes as a constant request for prayer, almost a gentle reminder to reinsert spiritual practices into one's routine. The practical sign of this message is persistence. When prayer begins to be experienced regularly, even on ordinary days, and not just in emotional moments, there are signs that the word has borne fruit. The fourth message is a warning about signs. It advises us to be attentive to signs in the world, to the spiritual sensitivity that perceives changes in nature or society. Here, prudence is the key. Seek objective confirmation and avoid baseless apocalyptic interpretations. Because distinguishing between a coherent sensitivity and collective panic is essential to making wise decisions. The fifth message invites preparation, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. It is a practical word that often brings guidance for protecting the family, organizing resources, and strengthening bonds. The indicator of authenticity in this message is the ability to make balanced decisions. If the recipient of the word begins to plan responsibly and without hysteria, this demonstrates the mature effect of the revelation. The sixth is a call to active faith, not merely a contemplative faith, but a faith that acts, that assumes commitments of service and social responsibility. The sign here is concrete engagement in works and attitudes that benefit others, not just emotional declarations. Finally, the seventh message brings a promise of comfort. While it points out difficulties, it assures presence, healing, and hope. This voice is recognized by the serene peace that remains, the renewed courage to face daily life, and the way people, after listening, get more for others with tenderness and responsibility. When I describe these 7 tones, I don't want to turn everything into a ready-made scheme. I want to offer a lens through which you can observe the hidden truth that can emerge from a spiritual experience without losing your mind. Within each type of warning lies a pattern of behavior that aids discernment, an urgency that calls for conscious action, an invitation to conversion that changes mindset, a request for prayer that creates habits, a warning that demands verification, an invitation to preparation that generates responsible decisions, a call to active faith that produces social impact, and a promise of consolation that sustains the journey. These patterns don't arise in isolation. They intertwine behind the scenes of life, in the small daily choices that demonstrate whether the word truly created something new within the recipient. In practice, identifying a genuine warning involves observing the coherence between the message and the results. If a word provokes actions that strengthen relationships, promote justice, encourage humility, and translate faith into service, then it likely originates from a calling that seeks transformation, not just momentary excitement. On the other hand, if the immediate reaction is to seek the spotlight, create division, or make impulsive decisions without consultation and reflection, beware. These are signs that the experience may be distorted by personal desires or the emotional dynamics of the group. Hidden truth, when legitimate, tends to manifest itself with simplicity and impact, not with empty spectacle. It's also worth remembering that the 7 messages unfold over time. A word rarely proves its authenticity in minutes. Often, revelations ripen like fruit that needs a season to grow. Thus, those who receive guidance must patiently observe what changes in my decisions emerged in the following weeks. What was the impact on my work, family, and friendships? Was there a transformation in habits that demonstrates growing responsibility? These practical questions help separate sensation from substance. Interweaving spiritual life with concrete choices is the ultimate test. Faith that transforms produces ethical and everyday consequences, and it is this coherence that confirms a true warning. In the collective environment, the 7 messages also gain expression through echoes that permeate diverse people and situations. When readings, prayers, and attitudes in different contexts point in the same direction without collusion, a relevant clue emerges. Even so, the validity of these echoes depends on intellectual honesty. It's essential to avoid echo chambers. Seek out leaders and communities with a history of integrity. monitor behind-the-scenes events, and assess whether intentions are transparent. Revelations that proceed with integrity are usually followed by beneficial works, not by rhetoric that seeks followers. Ultimately, understanding these messages means loving truth more than emotion. To love means having the courage to test, to ask, to adjust decisions, and to accept that some answers take time to appear. By recognizing the 7 tones, urgency, conversion, prayer, alertness, preparation, active faith, and consolation, you acquire tools to better interpret experiences, to make wiser decisions, and to embrace transformation without getting lost in dramatizations. The journey of discernment is a school of humility and responsibility, a space where hidden truth, when authentic, descends to earth in tangible fruits. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, and as we continue, we'll see real examples of how these messages manifested in the lives of ordinary people, demonstrating decisions that change destinies and the concrete impact that a well-received word can produce. Comment, "This makes sense to me." Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. And before we go any further, it's important to speak frankly about the common mistakes and pitfalls that can transform a path of discernment into a path of deception, anxiety, and community fracture. The first pitfall is fanaticism disguised as fervor, when the reaction to a spiritual experience translates into intolerance, a shutout of questions, or a cult of personality. The message itself loses its chance to show itself for what it truly is, an invitation to transformation, not a banner to fuel tension. Fanaticism stems from the fear of losing control, the need to always be right, and thus confuses signs with rituals of power. The cure for this is humility applied to daily life, the willingness to be corrected and to subject any experience to ethical and community criteria. Another common pitfall is the search for signs at all costs, as if the goal were to collect quick confirmations rather than build a journey of responsible faith. This urge to see signs pushes people to interpret coincidences as miracles and read messages based on their own desires, creating a circular logic where everything is proof of what one wants to believe. Healthy curiosity then becomes obsession, and the discerning mindset is lost when haste replaces patience. Selfish interpretation is a third error that deserves attention, projecting onto the spiritual experience things that favor personal interests, immediate prosperity, religious status, avenging old grievances, distorts the meaning of the calling. When interpretation serves the ego more than the common good, the consequences begin to appear in the form of divisions and hasty decisions. Authentic spirituality, on the contrary, tends to reduce the need for self-promotion and increase care for others. Therefore, a practical criterion is to always verify whether what you received encourages concrete love or serves to feed vanity. Dependence on sensations is another subtle trap, placing the validity of the experience solely on what one feels in the moment. Goosebumps, tears, ecstasy is exchanging discernment for emotional state. Feeling is real and can be a sign, but it is not definitive proof. Intense emotions can be stimulated by music, environment, fatigue, illness, or even group manipulation. Therefore, it is vital that the experience be scrutinized by time, reason, and the fruits it produces. Faced with these risks, what concrete and common-sense practices can we adopt to avoid getting lost? First, consult trusted leaders and mentors. Seeking community verification and pastoral discernment is not a weakness. It is a gesture of responsibility. Spiritual leaders with a reputation for integrity, respected theologians, and people of mature faith help put the experience into perspective, offering theoretical and pastoral tools that prevent hasty interpretations. Second, evaluate the fruits with practical eyes. Ask yourself if the experience has produced more peace or more agitation, more humility or more pride, more service or more isolation. Lasting fruits, compassion, constancy in spiritual practices, ethical decisions that resist pressure, are solid indications that the experience has a healthy origin. Third, test by the love and peace that the word generates. A message that truly comes to edify usually brings tranquility, even amidst the initial shock. It promotes cohesion and care, not discord. When the word generates actions that benefit others and calm the heart, it passes a simple and effective criterion. Furthermore, practice journaling and reflection. Write down what happened in detail, without embellishment. Record dates, conversations, circumstances, and subsequent decisions. This journal serves as a powerful tool for reviewing patterns, noticing repetitions, and preventing memory from shaping the past to justify a present desire. Give it time. Many confirmations only appear weeks or months later when the results begin to show. Avoid radical decisions based solely on a single event. Prefer gradual steps that can be evaluated and adjusted. Also seek a plurality of opinions. When people from different backgrounds, without collusion, point in the same direction, the likelihood of confirmation increases. But always follow with critical discernment, because echo is not automatic proof. The integrity of those who speak and the transparency of processes involve both reason and faith. Behind the scenes, pay attention to structures that promote clarity. Healthy communities have evaluation mechanisms, channels for questioning, and open practices that allow for correction. Be wary of environments where every question is seen as disloyalty, or where hierarchy prevents verification. Hidden truth does not fear scrutiny. On the contrary, it tends to strengthen when subjected to responsible examination. If there are signs of manipulation, suspicious financial gain, or spectacularization, maintain a prudent distance and seek guidance. Authentic transformation happens gradually and has a positive impact on collective life. When the result is fear, division, or easy enrichment for a few, it's time to stop and reevaluate. The journey of discernment also requires integration between heart and reason. Don't dismiss your feelings, but don't leave decisions to mere sensation. Use practical questions to guide your approach. Does this lead me to serve better? Does it promote reconciliation? Does this guidance require responsibility and effort from me, or does it merely promise ease? These questions help calibrate your mindset and make decisions that have concrete and beneficial consequences. Finally, practice humility as an operating principle. Recognizing that we can make mistakes, asking for correction, and being open to changing course when the fruits show another path is in itself a sign of spiritual maturity. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. And as we continue, we'll explore practical verification techniques, examples of questions leaders often ask in discernment processes, and real-life cases that illustrate how to avoid the pitfalls we just listed. Comment below, this resonates with me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, and to make this happen in a practical and transformative way, let's bring it all together into a plan you can implement today. Discerning an authentic warning doesn't have to be an indecipherable mystery. There are simple, testable steps aligned with a mindset of accountability that allow you to separate sensation from truth, emotion from fruit, and impulse from wise decision. First, pray for clarity. This isn't an improvised panic prayer, but a calm, continuous request to honestly see what's happening in your heart. As you pray, set your intention. Ask not only for confirmation of what you want to hear, but for the courage to accept what is truly necessary, even if it requires difficult changes. This posture of humility opens space for the hidden truth to manifest without the distortions of the ego, and is the foundation for any discernment process that produces real transformation. Then, observe the results over the next 30 days. Time is a good judge. Emotions pass, habits persist. If the experience produced lasting peace, if it generated conviction and small behavioral changes, more attention to others, more reflective silence, choices that align with values, then the signs of authenticity grow. Note what changes in routines, financial decisions, the way you relate to family, and your engagement with the community. The impact may be subtle at first, but consistency is what draws the line between an isolated episode and a sustainable transformation. Pay attention to who you become in the weeks that follow. More patient, more generous, less impulsive. These shifts in mindset and behavior are clear signs that the message is bearing fruit. Finally, seek mature counsel. This doesn't mean outsourcing everything, but sharing with people of responsible faith, leaders with a track record of integrity, and mentors who know the behind the scenes of spiritual processes and who don't get carried away by spectacles. Mature counsel acts as a mirror and a filter. It confronts, validates, and often protects against hasty decisions. Seek diversity of opinion, someone from your trusted circle, a spiritual guide, and a neutral voice who can point out practical aspects you might not see. Community doesn't negate experience. It complements it with wisdom and objective criteria. With these three pillars, prayer for clarity, observation of the fruits within 30 days, and seeking mature counsel, you have a simple yet profound protocol to begin testing whether a warning is genuine. Now, to make this even more effective, I propose a 7-day exercise designed to align heart and reason and transform curiosity into practice. On the first day, set aside time to pray and write. Describe the experience you had, the words you heard, the sensations in your body, the date, and the circumstances. Recording honestly is an antidote to biased memory. On the second and third days, practice silence and reading. Dedicate 20 minutes a day to reading texts that bring balance, faith passages, theological reflections, or writings from trusted leaders, and note whether the same themes naturally resurface in your mind. This helps to verify whether the revelation resonates coherently with tradition and recognized ethical truths. On days 4 and 5, observe and note practical fruits. Ask yourself, what small choices have I already started making differently? Are there new gestures of compassion, a greater willingness to listen, a less need for self-promotion? Record concrete examples. If there are no visible changes, don't rush to label the experience as invalid. Some seeds take time to germinate. On day 6, seek responsible dialogue. Share what you've written with a trusted person, a spiritual advisor, or a balanced friend of faith. Ask this person to read your notes and ask questions that challenge your perspective in a respectful way. This mirroring often reveals areas of self-deception that we don't see on our own. On day 7, summarize. Read your notes in full. Compare repeated elements. See if any convictions have emerged that resist critical analysis. And humbly assess whether what you felt points to transformation, fleeting consolation, or something that needs more time to unfold. During this week, maintain the posture of a gentle investigator. Curiosity without haste, courage without hysteria, and openness to correction. Observe external signs as well. Repeated coincidences, confirmations that arise in different contexts, doors that open after concrete actions. But always check whether these coincidences are not simply reflections of your desire. To do so, record and compare them in writing without embellishment. Remember, the truth that edifies needs no spectacle. It bears fruit and invites decisions that demand effort and responsibility. The transformation that matters is the one that, despite being challenging, generates greater well-being for the community and more integrity in your life. Throughout this practice, keep in mind some filtering questions we've used before. Does this lead me to love more, or just feel something intense? And does this experience invite me to make concrete decisions that benefit my life and the lives of others, even when it's difficult? If the answers point to practical love and real responsibilities, that's a good sign. If they point to spectacle and self-promotion, stepping back and re-evaluating is prudent. The journey of discernment is also a school of decisions, where each choice shapes habits that, accumulated, build destiny. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. And as we continue, I'll bring up real-life examples. Stories of ordinary people whose decisions, after a warning, transformed families and communities. And also cases where a lack of discretion caused pain and division. These contrasts demonstrate the practical impact of the choices we make when faced with a word. Comment? That makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking with me through this conversation. It already says a lot about your desire to seek clarity and truth. If this content has sparked reflection or brought something new to your journey, consider subscribing to the channel. That's how I know I must continue to bring you research, stories, and practical tools that truly help with transformation and everyday decisions. If you want to show me you stuck it out, write in the comments. I'm with you until the end. I read every message and enjoy responding to those who share from the heart. And if something here truly touched you, please leave a like. This simple gesture helps me understand that we are building a community that values discernment and practical love. There's a video here that complements this topic with real stories and clear signs. Click and stay with me there, and let's continue deepening this journey together.